Turn this thing on to 9 and see what happens.
So as I said, we're getting about 10 tons of Cabernet Sauvignon today, and Stephen walked us through the process of making Chardonnay back in September. How does this differ from the Chardonnay process, if at all?
Well, Chardonnay, we don't ferment on the skins. We press it off, we grind them up and press them off right away, and just the juice goes into the tank, and we throw the pomace away. With these grapes, most of the color is in the skins, and the way to get it out is to extract it with alcohol. So you want the skins with the rest of the must during fermentation so that you get good color. And you also get extraction of other anthocyanins like tannins, which contribute vital elements to the flavor of Cabernet. So this whole slush of grapes and juice goes into a tank and gets inoculated with yeast and ferments for something like a week. Sometimes we do a cold soak before we inoculate it with yeast to extract a little bit of extra color.
What does that mean?
The slush goes into the tank, and we reduce the temperature and gas the head space with CO2 so that as to protect it from oxygen, and cool it off so that it won't start working with the wild yeasts that are always on the grapes, and leave it that way for 3 or 4 days. And we believe, although we haven't done extensive experiments, that if you do that, you can extract some nice flavors and some good color from the grapes that you don't get during the fermentation. So
if you don't actually inoculate this with a yeast culture, it will ferment on its own?
Yes. Yeah, that's one of the things you have to watch if you're doing cold soak, is you have to make sure that you keep things cold enough and keep the head space gassed, and if fermentation does start, then you inoculate it immediately, so that you will have the strain you're counting on doing the fermentation rather than something that you don't know about and have no control over. There's a lot of wild yeast out there, and there's a lot of yeast around the winery too. There's no way to get it out without burning down the building, and so anything that comes in here is going to get some kind of inoculum in it. And we like to decide what yeast we're going to use, so we don't want the wrong thing growing in the must.
People talk about native fermentation. What are the advantages? You stated some disadvantages. What are the advantages?
Well, for one thing, it's not clear to me that they're getting a fermentation with a wild yeast out of the field. If they're doing it in a winery, the great probability is that some of the yeasts that have become endemic in the winery are inoculating the must, and they're getting a fermentation from something that they've used, from an isolate that they've used in the past that's just there in the winery, in the same way that a lot of places where they've baked bread don't need to inoculate at all, because the yeast is in the air and on the equipment and just around so much that the bread starts to rise without their putting yeast in it. And the same thing is true of wineries. They have wine yeast living there, and they will get in the grapes. So that's one. Another thing is, there are microorganisms, including many strains of yeast, that produce undesirable organic compounds when they go through fermentation. You want to know what you're getting. And yeasts that have been isolated in a laboratory and are pure strains are very predictable. I know people who've said they've got wonderful fermentations from just wild yeast. I don't know anybody who's taken the yeast into a laboratory during one of these wild yeast fermentations to have it identified, because it seems to me, I'm convinced that it's possible that it's an isolate that was used in the winery before the natural fermentation was ever done. One of the problems in barrel is that there's a yeast called Brettanomyces, which creates sort of cow flop smell in the wine, and it's a barrel room weed, and it's a yeast. And it's just one example of the yeast you don't want to make wine with. It used to be that virtually all French wine had some inoculum of Brett in it, and everybody more or less thought that that was just the way wine tasted. And since people have been more careful about avoiding Brett and been producing clean wines, we now know that those flavors are those characteristic flavors are due to contamination. So you want to have control over things as much as you can and know what's happening, because that way you can make a good, clean product every year. You can take a chance and you might come out very well without adding an inoculum. But the chances that you will come out badly are great enough that I don't feel that I can afford to do that. That was
there you have it.
That was probably more than you really wanted to know.
No,